In the following days, Jaebon was invited by her supposed lover, Yi-jun, for a night out, possibly to watch a movie, see a musical, or have a meal. There were no issues now, as she was single. However, on the same day, Jaebon was planning to win her back. His friend and colleague recommended that to win back his wife's heart, he should start with flowers and soap. Jaebon went to buy sunflowers, which symbolized love and admiration. That night, as planned, Jingon was out with her charming companion Ki-jun, who was going to pick up the car before they left. While she was alone, she thought that perhaps with him they could make a good couple. However, despite these thoughts, she still felt empty inside. Suddenly, Jaebon appeared and asked if she had time to go somewhere that night. At that moment, Ki-jun arrived to pick her up. He told her to get in or they'd be late. Jaebon felt bad, wondering if he should have asked before coming. Disappointed, he left, just wanting to thank her for what happened before. He left, telling her that he was right, perhaps it was best they never saw each other again. In the following days, Jaebon, as always, remembered the date of his father-in-law's death. He visited his grave and asked for forgiveness, admitting that he hadn't been a good husband and that he had divorced his daughter. A little later, he talked to his friend, feeling frustrated because he hadn't given her the flowers. He wanted to do more, but Jaebon remained silent. However, his friend said something that caught his attention. He told Jaebon that, in a relationship, sometimes you need to give in because you can't always go against the person you love. But his friend couldn't advise him properly unless he told him what had happened. Finally, Jaebon opened his heart. He confessed that he had seen his wife with her work colleague making plans together. That's why he had thrown the flowers away. His friend understood that his wife was no longer wasting time on him, and since they were no longer together, everything was over. But when Jaebon heard this, he reacted. To him, nothing was over yet. He ran after Jingon, reaching her workplace. He sent her a message, asking for just 5 minutes of her time. She wasn't willing to meet him. But Jaebon is not one to give up. He flooded her with messages, shortening the time he gave her each time. He ran to see her, but as soon as she saw him, she screamed, "Are you crazy?" She was furious and wanted to fight. Jaebon finally handed her the sunflowers and apologized, knowing he hadn't been there for her father's remembrance. He knew it wasn't easy to forgive, but at least she could accept the flowers and do whatever she wanted with them. He only wanted to give her something he had never given her before. After that, he left, leaving Jingon completely confused. She remembered that every time they fought, they would end up thinking about separating, but it never happened. Perhaps that's what was happening now. Maybe there was still love between them. Meanwhile, Jaebon's mother was at a medical checkup and received news that left her terrified. She had stomach cancer, and it was already in its 4th stage. The hardest part now was telling her family. That evening, Jaebon held a meeting with his brothers to drink, and he told them that he wanted to get back with Jingon, something that seemed crazy, but he didn't care. At that moment, Jaebon's mother called him, wanting to see them since they were drinking. She joined them soon after and saw her son so happy. She sat beside them, but suddenly she told them that Jaebon wanted to get back with Jingon. This surprised them, but she was furious. She began yelling at her son, saying that if he had behaved better, they would never have separated. Then came the moment when she had to tell them what was happening. She drank a glass of wine and suddenly told them about her cancer. She shared everything the doctor had informed her, that her illness was advanced. The only thing left to do now was to start chemotherapy as soon as possible, and she was determined not to give up. Upon hearing this, Jaebon thought it was a joke and he walked away because he couldn't process it. Jaejun followed him, and his mother knew they would have to accept it soon. But today, she at least wanted to talk to Jingon. She shared how her sons, Haejun and Jaebon, grew up in a good home, with food, clothes, and nothing lacking, but it was different for him. She had promised Moonjun, Yomin's mother, that she would raise her son as if he were her own, but she couldn't fulfill her promise. What she regretted the most was that when he studied in France, she knew he suffered due to a lack of many things, yet she still believed in his words and trusted that he was doing well. She had always wished that one day he would start calling her Mum. She was very greedy. At that moment, Joming told her it was time to go home. He took her in a taxi, and once they arrived, he got out with her. He didn't want to talk and asked her to enter the house. Seeing him so serious, she left. She was already in the elevator when Joming stopped her. She knew he was about to say something, and what she heard was "Mum." Terrified, he told her not to die and not to apologize, because if it hadn't been for her, he would have been dead a long time ago. His mother was moved, hugged him, and told him to calm down, saying, "Don't worry, son, your mum won't die." After seeing his mother, he called Jian. When she came to see him, she found him very distressed. She immediately tried to cheer him up, but upon seeing his face, she understood that something was wrong. He only thought about his mother and couldn't understand why she also had to go. He begged Jian to kill him, saying he couldn't breathe and needed salvation. On the other hand, Jaebon wasn't doing well either. He arrived at Jingon's house, overwhelmed, and punished himself, saying that all of this was a punishment for being selfish. He begged Jingon for help because he wasn't okay. The next morning, the three musketeers went to the hospital to find out what was really happening with his mother and what the next steps were. The doctor tried to explain everything to them, but he didn't give them much hope. Only about a 10% chance of surviving this type of cancer. However, nothing was certain. Some patients in stage 1 couldn't survive and died, while others, even in the terminal stage, managed to extend their lives longer than expected. They had to wait and hope for a miracle. After hearing all of this, the three of them were overwhelmed, but they trusted that together they could beat cancer. That night, Jaebon went to visit his mother. But as soon as he entered, he found Jingon leaving. His mother explained that she had come to help her pack her things to take her to the hospital, as she had experience because her father had spent a lot of time in the hospital. After hearing all of this, Jaebon ran after Jingon. He wanted to know how she had found out, and she explained that she had never lost contact with her mother. She had divorced him, not her mum. After hearing this, he understood that he also needed to get closer to his mother. The next day, he arrived at his ex-mother-in-law's restaurant and, of course, she was furious. He asked for food, and although she gave him the worst service possible and even added salt to his meal, Jaebon continued eating, thinking that it was meant to hurt him. She started yelling at him, not understanding why he came to visit when he never showed up before, but he remained firm. Seeing her so upset, he kneeled before her and apologized, finally realizing how foolish he had been. On his mother-in-law's birthday, he had only given her a money envelope and told her to take it and stop bothering him. He admitted that he hated the soup she made and apologized for all the thoughtlessness he had shown toward everyone. He finally understood how wrong he had been. The next day, Jiomin arrived at work and noticed that Jia wasn't there. He felt horrible, remembering everything he had said to her and not knowing what to say or do now. Just then, Jia walked in and talked to him as if nothing had happened. But today, Jia asked if she could work alone in her office for the day. He stayed by her side all day, following her wherever she went, but when they reached the men's bathroom, he couldn't enter. Jia was waiting for him outside. Eventually, he asked her to tell him what she thought of him following her all day. He asked, "Would you mind if I followed you everywhere, even to the women's bathroom?" Jia responded that she would feel loved. Jomin couldn't take it anymore and left. Jia added, "I will never leave you. Even if you're angry, shout at me or push me away. I will never leave your side." Amid tears, she pleaded, "Please, boss, don't die, and never say those awful things to me again." He hugged her and asked her to forgive him, promising he would never think about death again. Days passed, and Haiyun, Io's daughter, kept insisting to Jomin that he give her the phone number of his friend Haijun. But Jomin had repeated countless times that she wasn't suitable for his friend and that he wouldn't give her the number. She retorted, pointing out that she was rich, from a good family, beautiful, and had a professional career. But to him, she lacked the most important thing: kindness. And above all, she needed to be cured of her kleptomania. For her, this was unfair. Why was he judging her without even knowing her? But she started playing along with this game. They began to argue, and since Jiamin never holds back, he told her that the day she became president, he would resign. He then kicked her out of his office. Outside, the gossiping Kiva X was already spreading the latest rumor. Apparently, the CEO of the company wanted her boss to be her son-in-law. This news infuriated Jian. She stormed into her boss's office, but he didn't understand what she wanted to ask. She immediately locked the door and approached him to mark her territory. After seeing his reaction, she was sure he loved her, and only her. Days later, Ha-jun was in the park with Sol when one of the children shouted at Sol, saying she didn't have a mum. Sol insisted she did, and then Jian approached. She had gone for a walk and gently held Sol. Sol called her mum, and Jian explained to her that she wasn't her mother. But Sol, being quick-witted, pointed out the child, and Jian quickly understood, winking at Ha-jun to continue this little lie. That night, Ki-jun was going out with Jin-jun, planning to invite her to dinner. But B wasn't giving up easily. Seeing her with Ki-jun, he called her without hesitation and once again handed her flowers, this time red roses, symbols of love and passion. He told her he had been thinking of words he should have said to her after losing their baby. She didn't want to talk about it, but Ki-jun understood everything. He told her he would wait for her in his car, but Jaebon, after leaving, continued to speak, telling her that their baby was now in a better place and that none of this was her fault. Hearing this, she cried, not fully understanding why, but Jaebon did. She needed to hear those words from his mouth. That was all she needed to feel better. Seeing her cry, he approached and embraced her. Meanwhile, Jian returned home. As she got off the elevator, she saw Ha-jun lying at the entrance, drunk. Jian, as always, was worried and approached him, asking about Sol. He told her Sol was with her grandfather, but Jian couldn't understand why he was drinking, what was going on with him. He wanted to tell her about his mother, but it was difficult. Jian asked him not to share it if he didn't want to. But then Jian apologized, saying he was acting like a fool simply because he didn't know how to manage his emotions. This time he would willingly accept the punishment, and he ended up kissing Jian. She pushed him away, but he insisted. The worst part was that Jiamin arrived and saw everything. Jian quickly pushed him away, but Jiamin understood the situation. Jian wanted to explain and apologized for what he saw, but Jian wanted to explain and apologize for what he saw, but Jian wanted to want her apology because it wasn't her fault. Instead, he apologized on behalf of Jawn. Meanwhile, Jian wanted permission to beat him up. Of course, she could, but not to the point of killing him since he had a daughter. The next morning, the time for the judgment arrived. Fortunately, Jian wasn't the type to forget his mistakes because of alcohol. He knew he did something wrong, and Jiamin didn't want his apology. He just wanted to understand why he did it. Why the hell did he do that? That night, Jiamin hadn't come home. Even some of his belongings were missing. He was worried about the situation, and the only thing he could think of was going to see Jian to apologize. She asked him, "You know my boss and I are in a relationship, right?" Of course, he knew. He said he had drunk too much that day, but Jian wasn't satisfied with that explanation. She didn't want his apologies or excuses. If he wanted to end her anger, he needed to allow her to slap him twice. She accepted and gave him one slap for humiliating her and another for humiliating her friend. With that, she restarted his system to see if he ever thought of doing such foolish things again. He could even lose his friend over this. On the other hand, Haeun had fought with her mother. She was always insulting and humiliating her for not being like her. Haeun was fed up with this and went to a bar to drink, but unexpectedly she ran into Jiamin. When she asked for her friend's number, Jiamin gave it to her. He didn't care anymore. Jiamin thought a lot about it. Haeun had told him they were family, but did family do these kinds of things? He started talking to Haeun and shared how, at his graduation, Jian had made his family go on a trip and came alone to congratulate him. He gave him a bouquet of flowers, and how could he turn that down? But he never thought Jian would betray him like this. 4 days passed, and finally, Jian returned home. Jawn was worried, but then Jian knelt before him. He had thought a lot and came to the conclusion that he couldn't take him out of his life, but he also couldn't take Jian out. He begged Jawn to accept it and not to look for Jian anymore. Haeyeon approached and, hugging him, promised to do so. He deeply regretted everything. The next day, Haeyeon felt better. He was calm, but still tired. That's when Miss Mo arrived to see him. She found him asleep and wondered, should I kiss him? But of course that wasn't a good idea. When he woke up, she quickly ran away, embarrassed by her thoughts. On the other hand, Jian, the boss, was in a meeting where Jia was presenting her new idea to publish in the magazine. But suddenly, Jian said, "Jia, do you love me?" Everyone was surprised, and in the face of such a declaration, the boss called them slow. Jia tried to ask him not to say anything, but he could no longer separate his private life from his work life. He thought it was best for everyone to know, as it would lift a weight off his shoulders. So he publicly declared that he and Director Yu were seeing each other. After that, he left, leaving poor Jia stuck in a huge mess. She ran after him, and when she caught up, he asked her to step aside and talk for a moment. Once they were alone, he told her about his first love, Jian, Jian's sister. She was Sol's mother, but after dying in an accident, Sol became Jian's responsibility. However, when Jaeban and Jun told him that Jia resembled Jaejin, he was confused. He had never noticed it before and didn't understand if his feelings for her had developed because of that resemblance or if he was truly interested in her. He didn't want to hurt her, so he had been observing her for a while. He couldn't understand why she never asked him about it, but Jia didn't like to pressure anyone into revealing something they weren't ready to share. Then Jima told her, "You don't look like Jaejin. With her, I felt like dying, but with you, I want to live." Days passed, and one afternoon, Jia's mother was helping a customer in the shoe store where she worked. When the customer asked her for assistance, Jia accidentally made the woman's expensive handbag fall, causing a scratch. The woman blamed Jia for the damage and demanded that she pay 5 million won. What the woman didn't expect was that Jamin had arrived and witnessed the injustice. He intervened, carefully examined the bag, and ended up exposing the situation. Jia's mother thanked him, but he took the opportunity to introduce himself. They had met before. He was her daughter's boyfriend. Jia's mother asked why he had come to see her, and he explained that he wanted to win her favor. He knew Jia could be with a better man than him, but if her future mother-in-law went to his workplace, everyone would likely tell her that they didn't like him. He never cared about what others thought of him, but now he wanted her to teach him how to be better. Meanwhile, Jingjon was in turmoil. Jian had confessed his feelings to her and asked her to stop being just friends and become something more, but she couldn't respond. She felt a knot in her throat and everything became clear to her. She thought she would forget everything after separating from Jaebon, but it was even harder. She thought about him day and night. Then her mother called her, and soon after Jingjon went to see her mother, or rather, Haebon. They were fighting, and neither was willing to give in, but then she heard that he came every day and her mother was fed up. Jaebon had no idea that his mother-in-law had called Jinjun. When they were face to face, they decided to sit and talk. She wanted to know what was going on with him, and suddenly he blurted out, "I love you." Jinjun didn't understand why, but he confessed that despite everything, he still loved her deeply. The next day, on the runway, Jiamin was receiving details about the new magazine. He was furious, on the brink of exploding and sending them all out. But he began to say, "I'm sorry, guys. It seems the one responsible for these aberrations is me." And so, he started teaching them everything they needed to know in order to deliver good work. Little by little, this became a great lesson for everyone, as they were very interested in his vast experience. Jia understood, and at that moment a message arrived. He was trying to be better for her. Ah, how beautiful love is.